Battlestar Galactica Season 3, Episode 6, Torn is over, but we have to go fracking down the hatch here on RHAP. We know scripted TV, it's down the hatch here, covering BSG for Mike Bloom's very first time. As for me, I have been through it a couple of times, so you might say that the podcasters at the top of the billing are torn in their experiences, Mike, because we are talking about Torn, not the
Yes,
Natalie Imbruglia song, unfortunately.
yes, I'm
Oh,
so
I thought I saw a man brought to life on Battlestar Galactica. His name was Leobin. He died 5 times. He came back.
yeah, and he's still rocking this like nice casual. I almost look like the paper towel guy from our favorite episode, Exodus.
First I thought that you were talking about Mr. Clean, and then I thought, well, he doesn't look like John Locke.
No, though he definitely tried to clean house in a manner of speaking with everything that was going on with Starbuck. Talking about Torn, an episode, of course, named in honor of the late Rip Torn, because you know what they say, Josh, you can dodge a wrench, but you can't dodge a disease that's infecting your entire people.
Do you got a good Rip Torn in you?
I don't know. That's just that.
He
I guess
doesn't.
the answer no.
Oh, the answer is he doesn't have a good Rip Torn in him. I don't either. So no
I mean,
wrenches being thrown.
If our simultaneous Michael Keaton impression showed anything during our Halloween episode, I think you and I can do the gravelly voiced approach to impressions. And that's pretty much like Rip Torn's calling card, you know?
I guess I was today years old when I realized he's dead.
Yeah, he died a while ago.
Yeah, he's been dead for years. Not to be glib about it, but yeah,
Well,
I guess I just hadn't thought about it.
If the Disney animated Hercules is any consolation, we can just go to a statue of him and he'll be brought back to life.
Well, Mike, if it turns out that Rip Torn is one of these elusive Final Five Cylons, perhaps he could come back at some point here, as we are hearing the words Final Five for the first time here on Battlestar Galactica as it pertains to the Cylons. We are seeing a whole lot more of the Cylons' inner workings.
Right. So if it's the Final Five, does that mean is Jeff
Hydra
Probst going to...
Island.
Yeah, is Jeff Probst going to like introduce next episode, be like, all right, we're at the Final Five as he's walking through the hallways. He's doing his own projection to have it be in the jungle of like, here's what's happening right now. We've got 3 tribal councils, 2 immunity challenges, 1 sole surviving Cylon.
Certainly, some people could argue that Jeff Probst's view and vision of Survivor is a projection that is different from reality. Isn't that what he always says?
Yeah, exactly. Like, I choose to live in Survivor Man's paradise right now. You all can live in reality, but when you see Halls, I see a monster.
Yes, reality is what you make of it. So we get to see a whole bunch of stuff with that. Learn some funky new Cylon rules. Learn like how they like their way of piloting ships is just like sticking their hands into the goo. They do like little goops, like little goop moves. There's a hybrid, Mike, that is like the core FTL drive for the base stars. Lots of wild stuff going on the Cylon side of the storyline. And then, of course, there's everything that's happening in the fleet. Some celebrations. We get a new name for Baby Boomer that I feel released. I've been trying so hard to not say Athena since the very beginning of this podcast ever started. Now we can say Athena, so I'm thrilled. It's just a really good burden off my shoulders, Mike. I could lay down those burdens. Alas, Trouble in Paradise as 2 of our star players in the Big G, including star Buck, and the guy who gave her that nickname, Colonel Ty, not really seeing eye to eye, which is understandable for the one-eyed Ty, with Bill Adama. So lots of drama, lots of new developments. Hopefully you're starting to see that like the consequences of New Caprica are at least as heavy and severe as what we endured when we got to see it. That like New Caprica is in the rearview mirror, but New Caprica is kind of always with us, unfortunately, as well.
Yeah, it's a really interesting idea, and it almost makes me feel like the further we get away from New Caprica, that New Caprica was kind of like season 2.5, or that this part is now season 3.5, and that it does feel so distinctly separate and just confounds me delightfully so as we keep going of like, I cannot believe we started off the first 4 episodes of the season doing that, and now we've left it behind perhaps physically, but not emotionally, clearly. And if last episode the title was Hurt People, this episode is clearly named Misery Loves Company. Because to your
Yes.
point, these two characters who were probably two of the biggest like perennial adversaries from the human side of things since the very beginning are exchanging friendly banter and commiserating in each other, considering the fact that while they have undergone very respectively different traumas on New Caprica, they both leave it kind of in the same worldview, which is like, what I have lost is so much more than what you all have gained by doing this. And yeah, also doing, I think, a little bit of privilege shaming towards those that
Sure.
happen to be in the fleet during the intervening 6 months, being like, did you watch the webisodes? Did you see what happened to Duck?
Yeah.
That's not something we can leave with and say that we're all the same.
Screw Jammer, but Duck had a really hard time.
I wonder, the lead does loosely threaten Starbuck to like blast her out of the airlock in the beginning, if that is the case. I kind of wonder if like is the airlock kind of jammed, for lack of a better term, up, considering that they have done a fair number of public executions last episode. Are those bodies just kind of floating in orbit
Well, they're
of
gone. Yeah.
Big G?
Well, no. The bodies were ejected. They got like blown out of the airlock and into space. So it's not like there's just like sort of like a and just like all of these free floating bodies inside the Big G. Though it looks like that's kind of what we're dealing with one of these Cylon based stars. So I think for the sake of today, we're going to start with the Cylon side of the story. Then we'll talk through everything that's going on in the fleet proper. Of course, this is Down the Hatch. You want to be subscribed, search for Battlestar Galactica Down the Hatch wherever you get your podcasts. Hit subscribe, tell a friend. Easiest thing you can do to support the show, and it is a huge help for us if you subscribe and tell some friends to subscribe. So consider doing it. It is a thankful week. We are so thankful for our hatchlings. If you're thankful for us, just get your whole family at the table to hit subscribe to Down the Hatch. Take that phone out and say, Dad, I know you don't know what a podcast is, and you really don't know what this is going to be. Just hit the button. Button's good, not bad.
Who even knows if it's real, man? I mean, it also felt like a very timely Thanksgiving episode, considering a lot of it was just like
family arguments.
Belligerently sitting around yelling at each other and complaining about how they don't know how good they have it.
Correct. So if you want to get a little more BSG into your holiday festivities, if you celebrate, make sure to pass that podcast player around the room at the table. Of course, you want to get emails, and you can, down the hatch, RHAP@gmail.com. You can send us feedback. You can also send us ratings for each and every episode of Battlestar Galactica. And if you want to talk to us online as well, Mike and I are both prolifically on Blue Sky at a Mike Bloom type. At Round Howard, that is I. Come join us. We'll have a party. We'll talk BSG if you want to. Mike, it's season 3, episode 6, Torn. It originally aired November 3rd, 2006. So, we're just a few years. How many?
Oh, hybrid. Am I supposed to take this as word of God, what you're saying right now?
18 years is what I was trying to calculate. 18 years since it aired, with just a couple weeks over. And we are going to take down the Cylon side of the storyline first, which begins with like a series of dreams, kind of, with Baltar. Like, what's going on with Baltar, in your opinion, right now?
They sold the Mind Palace, and so they're like, shit, where do we go now? Let's just have Head 6 sunbathing on a rock out in the middle of the ocean. I will say...
a rock.
I really love the Cylon side of this. I feel like even last episode, like, it was interesting to see Baltar in there. I even talked about it last week, right? Of like, I don't want to spend too much time of him just trapped within 4 walls. Like, let's explore the ship a little bit more. And we got it as recent as this episode. I love getting to expand on this mythos as confusingly as maybe they introduce some of these concepts. And it's really nice to see Head 6 back in full force, and especially as we continue to explore, Josh, the simultaneous dichotomy Sky's Baltar will espouse in this episode of, okay, what are you?
Yeah.
Now that, like, I've left the presidency behind, can we just settle back in on this? Are you like an actual Cylon that's in my head, or are you some sort of psychological manifestation? And Head 6 is going to perhaps ascribe some reasoning as to why it may be the former and how that might come back to, of course, another perennial question of, am I a Cylon? But
Yeah.
it's really nice to see Head 6 back in things, especially now that like the relationship with Caprica 6 has like low-key kind of deteriorated. It's clear it's still complicated, but even especially if it is a psychological device, like this is now his crutch to fall back on, right? Of like,
Yeah.
well, if the present 6 does not necessarily like me, at least I can recede into my own mind and find this one who does.
Yes. Fascinating stuff in this episode as it pertains to the ideas of projection and the experiences that Baltar has had. Like it's asked on the show. We're going to have to interrogate this here on the podcast. You would think there's like another world in which Baltar is like in paradise right now. He is like he's surrounded by sixes and like a couple of Deannas at least who have seemed to be like sort of hot and horny for Baltar. Boomer is like dancing around naked. It's Electric Ladyland here on the base star. Have you ever
Ah,
been? Have you
I
ever
mean
been
that's
to
that.
Electric Ladyland?
Oh man, now I wish there was a different call sign besides Athena. Electric Ladyland.
Yeah. Have you ever been
Yeah,
to Electric Ladyland, Mike? No?
ELL, they did Mr. Blue Sky, right? No, I have not had a trip there, but yeah, I mean, it doesn't help that from Baltar's perspective, it is like, yes, perhaps the most fetishistic he gets to be, but in the most cold, sterile environment possible, where there
Yeah.
is like absolute ick around him to the point of where, oh, let me take you to where, all the magic happens. Here, you know how we guide the ship? We stick our hands in goo and hold it above a red light. Isn't that
Yes.
turning you on right now,
Yes.
Gaius? I should also say, Bear McCreary, I mean, I kind of love the episodes where he just randomly pulls out an instrument and is like, I'm really going to focus my music around this particular one this time around. Of course, we talk about like the string motif that shows up at certain points, especially around like the Lee and Adama scenes. I love the piano music we got throughout all these like contemplative moments that we get in this opening scene. The next time we do, when they're walking through the hallway, doing a little bit of like the Aaron Sorkin walk and talk, and Caprica 6 is describing what projection is. It's, again, very different. And as much as we love our Michael Giacchino, this does feel like, maybe this is speaking ill of it, the more like diverse type of scoring, which is interesting given the fact that unlike Lost, BSG has taken place in a very similar type of environment pretty much the entire time.
Yes. So it's interesting to see all of these various perspectives on how it all plays out. But Baltar is like he's like halfway wanted, halfway not. He's going to have to prove some utility here in order to like continue justifying his place on this
Or
ship.
bullshit it, which is like what he does best, right? It is really interesting that this episode kind of felt like a bit of a cultural reset for the show, except in a very different way. As much as Saltai will tell Adama, "I'm not that man I was 30 years ago," aka in seasons 1 and 2. Here we have Baltar pulling out his fastball, right? When Deanna and Caprica 6 are like, hey, do you know anything about Earth? Because I think that's where we want to go to. They're definite like hangers on, come with guys of like, oh, you're
Yes.
going this place, I'll come too. Yeah. I'll follow you. We could do that. And so Baltar's like, oh shit, they're gonna kill me. Yes, of course I know where Earth is.
Well, you know what? What he says is like I've done I've like it's not that I don't know where Earth is. I've done a great deal of like map like studying. I've been looking at the maps. I've been analyzing the star charts.
Which like
Yada yada
what give him
yada.
what type of scientist is he? Is he just like the most general scientist ever? Because we find out, to your point of this episode, Gaius Baltar is also like a unique type of astrophysicist as
Yeah, but
well.
look, he he didn't crack the code. So it's worth pointing out that he's got some ideas about lion's head, not mushrooms. I think lion's mane mushrooms. Like he's got some thoughts here. What we do get is that like it's corroborated that it's not bullshit, because at the fleet side of the storyline, there's going to be the scene where like Gata is like who once like Gata's back in the uniform, but he's just a couple steps removed from like having the cigarette in his hand, because he's got like his coat wide open. He's with
Yep.
Roslyn and Adama being like, yeah, these are the maps that he studied, and like this is what I think, and yada yada yada. And so like Gata, who was so close to Baltar, both in terms of positioning, but also as far as like if Baltar's not on our side, Gata's our best scientific mind. He's at least saying like, some stuff that seems to think that what Baltar tells Deanna when she comes and visits him and says like, hey, we're trying to move to Earth. Can you help us with that or not? He's like, well, I don't really know where it is. She's like, it's going to suck because we now probably are going to have to kill you. He's like, no, but this, and this. Like, it's not total bullshit.
No.
But it is like the kind of thing that like he goes into flight or fight mode very quickly and he chooses fight here.
Yeah, well, I think it is going to be. I'm trying to remember who has this line about how Baltar like is incredibly talented in the art of self-preservation, and yeah, that's been the character's MO from the very beginning. He's an absolute weasel. He's the one that's like, oh yes, take me aboard the Raptor.
Weasel. Yeah.
I'm incredibly important, and I did not contribute to this genocide whatsoever. This is a character that has been able to, for the most part, talk his way out of any situation. Now, look, we'll talk about it that maybe towards the end, he is in a much hotter goo than he once thought, considering that Caprica 6 has firsthand intel that he was absolutely lying about this. But yeah, much like the Cylons sort of repeat their same programming, everything has happened before, everything will happen again. That includes, guys, Baltar sort of lying his way out of a paper bag. But to your point, Josh, there is some basis in truth here.
Some basis in truth here. So they've decided that they want to go to Earth. That's the plan. One other thing before we move on is just like that initial scene with Baltar and Head 6. This is where she talks about Cylon psychology is based on projection. We're going to get like a much better explanation of it from a brick and mortar 6 from Caprica 6 in a moment here. She does say something interesting.
A Rick-esque burp when you say brick and mortar.
I know. I'm so sorry. I don't mean to be burping on the pod. Head 6 has a very interesting line when she's talking to Baltar in that initial scene when he once again asks directly, are you Caprica 6 or are you just a damaged part of my brain? She says, not for the first time, but for the first time in a minute, she says, I'm an angel of God here to help you, just as I have always been. I think the first time she said this was around Kobol's Last Gleaming. Yeah?
I would imagine that's the case. Yeah, it's always kind of been implied, right? Considering that, especially in season 1 and the Hand of God episode, how much she really foisted this religion onto him. I mean, we'll find out that maybe Deanna has kind of taken the mantle from 6 as like the most religious Cylon. Though I guess Leoben was as well, from what they talk about off screen with hybrids, messages, and the meaning therein. I mean, it's a good reminder, again, considering that this is a dynamic we haven't seen in a while, and to also distinguish between, to your point, the flesh and blood Caprica 6 as well as the Head 6, that this Head 6 is the one that's been getting in his head quite literally about how he has been this vessel that was chosen, that he will be the one to lead this very important child into the next generation of Cylons, which, again, is very interesting when it bristles up against, like, how empty are the threats that people like Deanna and Caprica 6 are making of like, yeah, you're basically useless to us without information. How much does that counter with perhaps a different interpretation from someone like a Head 6 of, no, you're incredibly important. I mean, we'll talk about this. There's actually a deleted scene that sort of counters what Deanna tells Baltar in this opening scene when, there's going to be a dealing with who Hera is going to kind of get abdicated to. And Deanna tells Baltar, you must be a very important part of his plan. It's almost like you're one of us.
Yeah.
So, again, I'm trying to think how much of the Dread Pirate Roberts, like, oh, you're very good, Baltar, perhaps I'll kill you tomorrow, is posturing versus actually weighing his utility.
As you wish. Oh, my sweet Gaius. What have I done?
He does have, and he does a better job with his hair tied back than like the little stupid Carrie Elway's mini ponytail.
Don't you dare call that mini pone stupid. That was the hottest thing. This sweet little pone.
I think in an age of man bun, it could have done better.
No. Wesley's hair is everything. No one's coming for the Dread Pirates Roberts hair on my watch.
Do you think so? Did Wesley grow like the Adama-esque mustache? Is that his attempt at it?
It's part of his disguise. Yeah, as we all know, like a mustache works masterfully with any disguise.
Exactly. That's why the how many people have worn glasses and mustaches for years and years
and
years?
Groucho Marx, you weren't the first.
Exactly. If that is your real name.
If that is even your real name. Okay, so just wanted to flag that because it's not the first, and it's like such a big thing to say. I'm an angel of God sent to look over you, just as I've always been. It's like, whoa, okay. So she says that again. All right, so Baltar's going to be telling them about everything that he has learned from studying the map. There's this research into a pulsar. The Cylons decide that they're going to go and visit. Baltar is being led around the ship by Caprica 6. He says that it is very difficult to navigate, and Caprica 6 says, well, it would be hard without projection. Have you ever daydreamed? She asks him, which is very funny because of how many times it seems like he has daydreamed of her.
Yes, actually, one time I was wanking it in my lab thinking of you.
Yeah. And then people walked in, and I still was able to retain my job and eventually become president of the United
But not my
States.
semen.
Factual fiction. And so she tells him about projection and how Cylons can choose to see their environment however they wish. She chooses to see these hallways as a forest full of birds and lights. These are the aesthetics rather than specific memories that bring her pleasure. This helps her surround herself with God's creation. We see a Doral like walk through, and she's kind of like, he's probably into like the more like sterile, workplace vibe. And so while this is happening, Baltar daydreams of himself back on that beach with Head 6, if it's daydreaming. And he says, wait, am I a Cylon? And he says it out loud. And Caprica 6 swivels around and says, what did you just say? He's like, am I so tired? Am I the most tired I've ever been? I don't know. Yawn. Yeah. Am I a sigh? Yawn.
I meant to say, am I cry long? Because I've been crying for so long in my cell. I'm so happy to be walking around.
Yeah. So she can tell that he seems distracted, but I do think like good on the show to be like asking that question that I think a lot of people would just like go straight to, like, if the Reddit boards had existed, whatever BSG message boards exist of like,
yeah, and any dark, was there a dark UFO for BSG?
I'm sure it existed. I don't know of it. Maybe one of the Ben or Brendan behind the curtain can let us know. I was not active in any kind of communities, as I have said across the journey here. Like, I came to it late and was able to watch, I think it was the second half of season 4 live is what I was able to watch. Ooh. So most of this I've just been able to watch on a binge. So I'm not entirely sure. Yeah. But Caprica 6 says, like, I don't know why you're feeling so weird about all of this. Like, you should feel comfortable. You gave us the data on Earth, the stuff with saving the baby. It's impressed other models. And she says, once I thought we'd have a baby. And Baltar's like, yeah, I don't really want to talk about that. What I would like to talk about is how I have been on this ship for a while. We don't have an exact calendar date amount of time on how much time has passed.
Right.
But considering everything with like Lee and Hilo, you can imagine like some time has passed. Like, there's TV
other than or Lee just got Ozempic real quick.
There's TV logic in there. Yeah, like God, Doc Cottle's like, there's this experimental new drug. Come here, Lee. He's just like stabbing him in the butt.
I'm not pre-diabetic. I'm Lee diabetic.
I'm Lee diabetic. Like, some time has passed for sure. How much time, it's a little unclear. But this, like, this fear that you had of like, we're just gonna have like Baltar locked away for weeks. It seems like that did happen. We just were able to like yada yada past it.
Yeah, we get a little bit of like the weird, again, piano-laden montage in the beginning where like he visited a couple times and he just silently like holds his hand over the red light. I mean, this idea is so interesting. And I love it first because from an environmental perspective, it just allows for like greater explorations instead of like, hey, let's just hang out on side of this one light-filled hallway barren for weeks at a time. Like, yeah, we'll transport ourselves to forest. I mean, to the point about the sort of horseshoe effect of Cylons and humans, of like, how different are we? The fact that Caprica 6 is able to bridge this understanding of projection by basically being like, oh, it's just like us daydreaming, except it's probably more literal, where we're able to like transport our consciousness there. I mean, it also goes to the idea of sort of like coping. I mean, quite literally projection of like, I am putting myself somewhere else to help me live with the circumstances that I am in right now. I will say, and maybe I'll leave my words as recent as next week, Josh, alongside my turkey, I do feel like the whole projection call out is a little bit of a red herring.
Okay.
Just because the Head 6 projection is distinctly different. Like, the Doral walking through the forest seems to me from Caprica 6 that this is less dream sequence logic, and this is more holodeck logic.
Yeah.
This is like if you are corporeal, if you are physically in the scene, you are entering it and leaving it. From Baltar's perspective, it's more so that he mentally is transported to another place, and we see very little physical crossover. Like that liminal space is pretty much just him and Head 6. So I'm still in the camp that this is a different situation than, oh, Baltar's a Cylon and this is his form of projection. If anything, it's more meaningful to me that we all have these methods of projection no matter what race we occupy.
Interesting. I think that's a great observation. Baltar makes a great observation. Baltar says, hey, look, so I can't help but notice that I have only seen 7 models.
Several.
There are supposedly 7 models. And he asks, who are the final 5?
And my subtitles had this in all caps, Josh, so I know this is something.
Who are the final 5? Caprica 6 says, I can't talk about it. It's complicated. He says, like, can't or won't. Can't. I can't.
It's a season 4 thing, Gaius. We can't say it in season 3, episode 6.
It's complicated. We do not talk about them ever. He asks, would you know one if you saw one? And before she's able to answer, Deanna and Doral are going to show up and talk about how, like, oh, the ship that we sent to investigate the nebula is, you know, blah, 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 blah. But we should probably talk about this, Mike. As you note in subtitles, capital final 5. This is a big piece of lore that we're starting to investigate here. It's been a minute since we've had a Cylon reveal. It's been since Cavil, right?
Yeah, I mean, that, to be fair, that was the season 2 finale, so it's only been 6 episodes.
Of course, but Baltar is here saying, like, okay, well, I've clocked the 7 that are here. What about those other 5 when we were told there are 12 models? What are you taking from all of this?
I think right now it is a shadowy Illuminati-esque cabal of unknown Cylons. I think that these final 5 are the only Cylons that are non-replicable. Either they choose not to be, or maybe there are no resurrection ships nearby. But I think, and we talked about this back during the days of Cylon Frog God, Josh, that they might be the ones sort of passing down the orders from on high, either quite literally or, you know, through this sort of more metaphysical representation of like, your lord commands you to do this. They're, for lack of a better term, perhaps the man behind the curtain cumulatively that is trying to guide the Cylons as to what to do. I think I took notice of, to your point, the idea that Baltar asked Caprica 6, like, if one looked you in the face, would you know that they were one of the final 5? And before Caprica 6 responds, then we move on. That to me more so signifies, I think it helps easily patch up the plot hole of like, why haven't we seen these 5 Cylons before? What have they been doing? Yeah. I think if they have sort of cordoned themselves off into like almost this oligarchy, like this group of people that are remaining secretive to all the other Cylons, and like these Cylons are kind of the worker bees in service of the cumulative queen that is this quintet. That's something that makes the most sense to me, and I think would be a fun sort of reveal and endgame to build to as well, which is like, okay, who is this group that's working behind the scenes and trying to seed that out one person at a time?
Yeah. What does this do, if anything, to any of like your developing Cylon theories? Like, recently you have been like, I think Chief is potentially a Cylon, or like Gata, you have said along the way, like, I think Gata could be a Cylon. How does that measure up with your idea of like an oligarchy, like a shadow cabal of Cylons?
I will say conservatively, 80% of the final 5 will be characters that we know right now. Because it doesn't make any sense if it's like, hey, here's this random character actor. Oh, they're one of the final 5. Because we already have kind of been in that area with a Deanna, with a Brother Cavil as well. I think the big reveal needs to be, whenever they do it, these 4 or even these 5 Cylons are actually, you know, we thought they were not Cylons, but it turns out they were Cylons the whole time, which is like taking the Boomer reveal and quintumpling it. Quite literally. I think that's how you outdo that end of the miniseries.
Do you want to just throw 5 names at the wall? It's the first time you're hearing Final 5. Don't you want to just like doot, 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 doot?
All right, let me bring up the
fast. Let's do rapid fire. Gut instinct.
Well, I want to bring up the actor list first because I feel like it could be Also, I mean, we know that this is the case with BSG, that like random people will pop up. Okay, so I'm going to stick with what I know, which is I think Chief is a Cylon.
Okay.
I'll put Gata in there
Okay.
as a Cylon. Let me see. Zarek, throw him in
Okay.
there as a Cylon. We
Okay.
need a little bit of gender diversity, so let's put in Racetrack. Throw her
Okay.
in there
Put
for
Racetrack
good
in.
measure. And then I will put. I'm trying to think if there's like any other big character that would be a Cylon, but I think Tyrell would probably be the big reveal. You know what? I'll put Callie in there as well. I don't know if
Okay.
they're if I don't know if they'd continue to do the Cylon human hybrid program by like saying, Chief, why don't you try this time? Go ahead, impregnate a human.
Yeah. All right. So Mike's first final five. We'll see if it adjusts at all as we go. But just to get it on the record, your final five as it stands: Chief, Gata, Zarek, Racetrack, Callie.
Yeah, I'll put it in there for now.
Cool.
This is completely knee-jerk response. We'll see if my knee will get healthier the more
Shot from the hip. And if you want to ever revisit this as the show, if the show brings up final five,
Oh my god, imagine if they did it.
brings up the final five again.
They're gonna do it. Okay, I'm planting my freaking flag in the ground. They're gonna reveal the final five, or I swear to God, I'm going to Ronald D. Moore's house and I'm egging it personally.
We will know who the Cylons are by the end of
That's what I figured. Yeah.
It would be really like, that would be like, I don't think we'd be podcasting about the show because that would be like such a dereliction of duty.
And I also feel like I would have heard about it if it didn't.
Yeah,
You know,
I think
like
that's right.
as much as I'm in the dark about the show,
Yeah.
I think I would have heard if it's like BSG, Bob but botches the landing by not revealing who the final five Cylons are.
Yeah. Okay, so they get this distress call, and then they get silence. And Doral says, okay, the hybrid is analyzing the data. And I'm like, what's the hybrid? Paul's just like, huh? What is that? Hybrid? Is that like the sativa and the indica? Like, what is this? And Caprica says, like, just don't talk about this. The Cylons put their hands in the goo squad, just like little goo keyboards. And Six says that the hybrid has made some sense of the data. Doral says this shouldn't happen to them, that people are like dying potentially. Simon says it's not only possible, but maybe inevitable that we would start to decompose since we've taken human form. Leoben says God is testing us and it's up to us to pass the test. Sharon says the data shows there's this disease that's killing the Cylons on the base ship, all of them. And Simon gets concerned about diseased Cylons resurrecting and infecting their entire race. Deanna says we should take the resurrection ship out of range of the base ship and jump to the location. Sharon says we should not jump there. We don't know how the Centurions and the Raiders will be affected, and we can't get on board the ship without risking infection. Cue the angel of God, Mike, head six herself, saying to Baltar, you should go on the ship. Chances are low that a disease affecting Centurions and Raiders would affect you, unless, of course, you're one of the final five, in which case, wouldn't you rather get it over with and die?
Yeah, it's a win-win. Either you die and either get like this bleak existence snuffed out, or you're a Cylon and maybe you'll resurrect yourself, or you get to do some fun like spooky game type of stuff, hunting around, getting to figure out what's exactly going on with the Cylons, and it allows you an opportunity to be by yourself as well. So yeah, he decides to step up in this moment, prove that he is the ally that he is. But yeah, I mean, what is so interesting about this storyline to me in this episode is, again, that horseshoe theory, to see the Cylons, especially after Baltar does his investigation, make the same decisions and meet the same sort of like moral dilemmas that humanity has, namely with this idea that is going to be espoused in the very beginning of the season, Josh, of like, okay, do we just keep moving forward with who we have for a greater good, or do we possibly, try to take in all of these Cylons that we left behind, but at the cost of risking our entire population?
Yeah, some people got to roll the hard six, others got to roll the hard Caprica six, Mike. Baltar makes the offer. I'll go. You may be synthetic, but I'm not stupid, is the energy. He says, I'm a trained scientist. I can make observations and I can bring info back about
I
the
can fly a
disease.
raptor by myself, apparently.
He says they put it on autopilot. They'll put it on autopilot to get him there. And so he has signed up for this mission. Baltar ends up being taken to see the hybrid, and we get to see the hybrid. And here is what we know so far, Mike. It is a woman in a white bath. It's like the white bath that the Cylons we've seen, like kind of like wake up in.
The goop pod, as we like to call it.
She is speaking words, but they're hard to make sense of. Baltar sees biological and mechanical structures emerging from her bath, and liquid emerges from them that forms the red flickering data that the Cylons are connecting to. Caprica 6 explains that most of the Cylons think the hybrid's words are meaningless nonsense, but the ones that you know as Leoben believe her words are the words of God and all mean something. Caprica 6 says the hybrid is the base ship in a very real sense, like is the base ship. She experiences life differently, swimming in the heavens. She breathes in cosmic dust. Leoben might be right. Maybe she does see God. Then the hybrid says jump, and the base ship jumps. What was going through your mind as you saw the hybrid for the first time? Is it just like, oh, I'm so ripped? Like, is it literally like the hybrid? Like, what was your take on the hybrid?
That's what I said to her.
Oh,
hybrid.
Hybrid.
Yeah. Brid is weird, dude. Like, this is maybe one of the weirdest things I've seen on the show, because it's sort of like Minority Report mixed with The Matrix, where like here is a little bit of a precog character, or at least this basically it's like if the ship's computer was sort of anthropomorphized, but also at the same time like got stuck in fortune cookie mode, where it's just giving out all this useless types of wisdom, but will probably prove to be prophetic in the end, almost like Helena Targaryen style of like, oh, should we be interpreting what she's saying? I took down the last thing that she said in this episode when she was like really freaking out, but I didn't take down any of the other stuff. What a weird thing to introduce in the Cylon mythos, that like she's a hybrid, but not a hybrid in the way that Hera is. Right. Instead of being a human Cylon hybrid, she's a hybrid of a Cylon and a computer?
Kids, I'm a computer.
Could it
stop all the base jumping?
Yeah, could this have been like a PSA for what happened if Baby Boomer kept herself jacked into the system of the Galactica back in season 2? Was this a Cylon that just got so corrupted by being connected to the computer, or did I don't know, did a Cylon do something with a computer illicitly behind the scenes to produce this monstrosity? It is so weird. I was so distracted by the hair, Josh. I couldn't tell if this was like a hair net at first, or if this was like actually braided hair on this woman.
Yeah. My when I remember what I thought when I was watching it the very first time. So I'll just put it out there. I'm not saying that this is the answer or anything, but my take when I watched BSG the first time on the hybrid, it felt like this was like the Cylons' attempt at creating life in their own image. Like once they started like being able to like have this human form, and that this was like life in their own image. And of course, like this is what they end up making, is something funky and robotic and not quite lifelike. And they're like disappointed with like the nonsense, but it is also somehow able to like power their stuff and power their ships and whatever. That was like my first take on it. And for me, it helped me like get into the mode of thinking about like, why are they so obsessed with creating life? Like, like Hera and everything like that. Was the hybrid like an early step towards that? Again, we'll figure out what the hybrid is as we go along here on BSG. But those were my first thoughts when I watched it the very first time.
I mean, you say as we go through BSG, I don't think the hybrid is long for this world. Perhaps, I don't think its footprint is going to be perhaps as large as the hybrids in our current world, Josh, just because I think especially with the way we leave things of like it essentially jumping into the middle of a hotbed of disease. Yes, the hybrid is part computer, but it is also part Cylon as well. So I would imagine that there might be some passages. Hell, we talked about maybe Baltar might be a vector, actually, and maybe the Cylon race doomed itself in the first place, letting him go. It just feels like this is a bit of like, not exactly, I wouldn't call Deus Ex Machina for such a God-fearing and God-celebrating people, but this feels so out of nowhere that it is kind of impossible to keep the hybrid in the rest of the series
Yeah.
without this being like a complete game changer of like, well, no wonder the Cylons have been able to chase humanity. They have this weird computer kid that just completely jumps them whenever they need to. I mean, this also reminds me a lot of Star Trek Discovery, down to the goo, Josh, because there is a character that is able to take advantage of the spore drive, as they call it, this new technology for being able to jump your ship. And one character basically becomes the human spore drive, and he even operates it by sticking his hands in goo. So that felt very much like a reminder to me. I mean, it was a cool piece of mythology, but I'm still kind of wrapping my head around it, much like that hair wrap around the hybrid herself.
Yes. Okay. Well, let's see how much longer we have to unpack it. We will unpack it for as long as we can. Baltar's going to go to this base ship. He is going to.
Can you clarify something actually for me, Josh,
Yes.
before we move forward? Is there a difference between a base ship and a base star for Cylons?
No, I think that they're the same thing.
Okay, great.
That's my understanding. If I'm wrong about that, someone be like, someone well actually me please. That would be fine.
Who's Will actually?
Who is Will actually? Well actually is when you show up to my doorstep on Christmas Eve with a bunch of cue cards, except instead of expressing your love for me, you're just correcting everything I've ever said. Baltar goes on board onto this spaceship, and it's like desolate. And like you get to see like 100 different dead Lucy Lawlesses. Like there's just like so many dead Cylons. He's taking photos. They're like violently ill. He finds a man-made device, and as he goes to examine it, there is this not quite yet dead brunette Six.
Yes.
Who reaches out, grabs his leg, asks him to kill her. Like, I've seen what happens. Please don't let me die that way. He says, there's no resurrection ship nearby. You'll just die. He instead just takes a blood sample to help make a treatment and starts to wrap it up here. She says, you're from the Galactica. And he says, no. I'm from another base ship. So how does she know who he is? Is it just because like Gaius Baltar's a famous dude?
No, because he's not a Cylon. Like that's the thing. It's like I only know 6 Cylons. You don't look anything like them.
Yeah, you don't look like any of the only other faces that I've ever seen.
Yeah, it certainly doesn't help for you to try to like hide in plain sight on a Cylon base star. But Baltar is insisting like, no, don't worry. I'm with you. And this is when Brunette Six is going to kind of insist on her deathbed, right? Like, okay, so this big hunk of metal that's on the ship, this was a beacon that was sent in at these coordinates. She assumes that it was placed there by the 13th tribe, right? We'll talk about this in the other storyline, that this was left by humanity that went to Earth the first time. And so it's like, you people poisoned us. You wanted to kill us. You sent us here. For that very reason, Baltar's like, shh, go to sleep. It's fine. I don't need to talk to you anymore.
Yeah.
And chokes her out.
Then again, if what Caprica 6 had said before of like, we can't talk about it. And if we're left with this like unanswered question of like, if you saw one, would you know? If the answer to that question was no, then this 6 would not recognize Baltar potentially. So just things to keep in mind. Okay, so this is some kind of beacon. It looks very old, too old. This 6 says it might have been left by the 13th tribe, left to destroy any Cylons who found it. And then Baltar, puts her to sleep. Shut up!
Yeah, and you can see James Callis's eyes. Like, if they could bug out any further, they would have cracked that helmet wide open. He is absolutely manic. And listen, Baltar is someone who lives in the name of self-preservation. In this case, it wasn't self-preservation as in Brunette Six was attacking him. It was more so, I think, him trying to almost live in denial about the fact of like, he lives with you, but he does not walk among you in a manner of speaking. He's a bit of a stranger in a strange land, despite the fact that I think actually Starbuck and Ty more so represent the mood that Jack is in that particular episode. That Baltar is basically trying to put to rest the insistence and reminder of the fact that, oh, you are an outsider. You are a human at the end of the day. And he will also try to metaphorically choke out that information as well by being like, everything's hunky dory here, and ends up being kind of a self fulfilling prophecy that Brunette Six tells him, which is like, you're going to lie about this. You're not going to tell them about this at all. You're going to bring the Cylons here and kill them all. And Baltar's like, that's not a bad idea, actually.
Not a bad idea, because he does, when he goes back, he doesn't mention the beacon. And he says, like, I didn't do this. I'm not responsible for any of this. I didn't see much. It's really grim in there. The Cylons are arguing. Deanna has the hybrid, like, tries to get the hybrid to jump. The hybrid objects to the jump. Deanna says, you don't get a vote. And they order the jump. They demand the jump. Deanna says that the disease must have come from somewhere. Baltar, really? Nothing? He's like, yeah, no idea. And then Caprica 6 puts her hand onto the goo panel, and she's able to retrieve an image of the beacon that Baltar saw. And
So, yeah, like,
she now knows that Baltar is lying.
So how did this happen? Did he just like have a camera in his suit? Can the
He was
hybrid see
taking
through walls?
photos. Like, he was literally taking photos.
Then, dude,
Yeah.
if you're saying
Yeah.
nothing happened,
Yeah.
get rid of the photo.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know if like the photos just like immediately uplinked back. Maybe not his very best plan, Mike.
Like,
Maybe
wasn't
not.
there an entire season 1 episode about how he had to delete incriminating footage that he was the one behind the entire Department of Defense leak that blew up all of the colonies? Shouldn't he know to make sure every T is crossed and every I is dotted before he tries to do some of this?
No, surveillance is a weak part for a guy as Baltar. He doesn't know how to avoid it.
Where's Gato when you need him?
Yeah, that's right. So that's what's going on with the Cylons. There's a little bit of crossover here in the Fleet side of the storyline, but by and large, the Fleet side of the storyline is a lot more of like a moody, internal, character-focused journey, which I love. I think that the stuff here with the Fleet is really, really, really strong work. Once again, for my guy Saul Ty, as well as for Kara. Even if I think they will end up getting demerits ultimately from us because of their behavior, I think it's a great character episode for both of them. So when we go over to the Colonial Fleet, it's we're doing these training exercises. Laser tag in space. Cat's got blue team. Lee has red team, and immediately you can see that chiseled jawline is back.
Yeah, and once he actually, the swagger that he brings back to the flight deck and the anger within him, you could tell Fatsuit Leodama is over. He will lampshade this, assumingly later on when he's like, remind me never to let that happen again. Yeah. But he's back, including, again, as we've talked about, a bit of a rerun here to start off. Some of you heard this before, Josh. Starbuck is working under Leodama, but she's acting up and she doesn't listen to him. And as a result, things go haywire.
Well, as we talked about last time, like there's been like some established funkiness that occurred between Starbuck and Lee during like the time between them getting to New Caprica and certainly them being here now. Like even before the Cylons came to New Caprica, right? Like Kara's like, I can't talk to him. So like this is like their first big scene together of the season so far. And they don't seem to have like that old spark. They just seem to have like the old fury. And so yeah, he grounds her. I do want to say that while they're doing these training exercises, there's a pilot named Narcho.
Yes, I needed to talk about Narcho.
Narcho?
Narcho, a.k.a. if an Australian had said the word nacho.
Narcho?
And for a scene that we're going to get in a little bit about like how someone gets a call sign, as we usually do, Josh, I'm just mystified about what the origin story was. Actually, you know what it was? It was the Jerry Gergich, like, one time someone in the commissary was making like a plate of nachos. This guy walked in like, oh, you got some nachos going on?
Yeah.
And they
said, like nachos? Like, yeah, those like little chips that you put on the cheese sauce.
Yeah,
and the meat?
This is his boggle moment.
And to this day, like no one has corrected him. That like.
Oh, I was thinking more so that they were mocking him. Like, remember that time that this guy said Narcho?
No, they're just like, no, it's Narcho. It's your favorite food. We're gonna give that to you. He's like, okay, sure, all right, Narcho. No problem.
Standing by.
Yeah. You sure you don't want to call me hot cheese? Ha ha ha. No.
But the irony is that they don't give him any nachos. He's never had one in his life. He doesn't understand the nickname. That's why the concept was so foreign to him.
You get you get Nacho and Hot Dog together, and you're halfway there to like a really good time at the ballpark, Mike.
Unless could Nacho just
We
be
need
someone
someone to get a call sign soda.
or well, we have. Yeah, I was gonna say we already have hot dog. Peanuts could be another one. Could have
Peanuts
been
would
one.
be good.
Could have been baby boomers.
Budweiser, depending on
I mean,
which.
that would have been a very
Yeah.
interesting commentary on capitalism in this society. I also wonder, could Nacho instead be a reference to the fact that this guy is developing a new hit streaming series about the life of Pablo Escobar that's going to be just a little bit different than what we're familiar
Yeah,
with?
Narcos coming out. Pedro Pascal starring. Boyd Holbrook is there too. It's the whole shebang. So Lee's gonna ground Starbuck. This whole episode for this portion of it is really gonna be about Kara and Saul not doing so well in the wake of everything. So for Ty, he's drinking in his quarters. He's looking at photos of Ellen. He hears what seems like Ellen's voice. He goes out and finds like a woman who has like is the spitting image of Ellen's backside.
That's what I'm used to seeing.
Get off me, you creepy old man.
I also like how she says that like she has no idea who he is as well. Like, I don't even know who you are. Get away from me. I know.
Yeah.
So it's always an interesting question, right? So like, how well known are our main characters? But I guess there's also a bunch of civilians that have just been kind of put aboard here, including Casey and Casey's mom. She's got it going on as she's going to be like, hey, do you want to set up a play date with you and my daughter that you thought was your daughter? And Starbucks like, I'm good. Get away from me, you weird lady.
Yeah. She's like looking at him. He's like this like one-eyed bandaged dude who's just like touching her. She's like, nah, dude. One thing that we didn't talk about last time in too much detail that someone on Blue Sky had asked, like, I really hope that you make a meal out of this because it's just like the best line is when Ty says to Gaeta, I seem to have lost something. Have you found it? My eye. Just like such a dark moment for the show. One-eyed Ty is such a vibe.
But it's so funny at the same time. Like he kind of has this gallows sense of humor.
Yes.
And like, there is still, as much again as he's claiming, like, I'm not the man I was 30 years ago, Bill, later on, he still kind of has that smarminess and snarkiness to him, especially when he's in really at the precipice of a very, very bad time. So yeah, it's a rough state for the two of them. And what I will say overall that I think honestly did impact my enjoyment of this episode is what I used to say about a good amount of stuff on Lost, including some of its worst episodes. And I don't think this certainly is, but episodes like Fire Plus Water and Stranger in a Strange Land, which is like, from a writing and character standpoint, I can appreciate what they're doing here. It doesn't mean I like it. And again,
Sure.
I think from a logical standpoint, it makes sense to not have these characters immediately just be on the up and back in fighting condition and everything. Like they need to work through their trauma. And it seems like at least Starbuck is a bit on the mend. I did certainly think that when she rebuffs Casey and her mom, I'm like, all right, let's put a pin in one of the last scenes of the episode when Kara's going to be able to walk into the oil slick or whatever it's called and be able to talk with Casey. Like she's going to be on the mend. Ty obviously has much more blood on his hands, quite literally. And so like, while I understand the place that it's putting these characters in, and I think especially with this being a 2-part episode, it is going to perhaps remedy itself at least somewhat next time with like Saul putting his life together and coming out in a time of need. I do think at the same time, it was not the most satisfying viewing experience, just watching these characters be so incredibly self-destructive. And it's tough. I think even nowadays when we have a much larger scope as to like not even the concept of an anti-hero, but just how complicated human beings can be and how much they can hurt others and themselves, it still brings me a good amount of discomfort when I see characters in a state like this.
Sure, totally understand. As you mentioned, Starbuck, Julia and Casey find Starbuck, and Starbuck is rude to them. And Julia says, well, you could find us at Camp Oil Slick if you ever change your mind. Camp Oil Slick? Well, yeah, like, I don't want to go to Camp Oil Slick. I don't think Camp Oil Slick is like, give me Camp Anawana every day.
Well, I think they should have, and they're all saying, ugh, at the end of this. Yeah. They should have.
Another good call sign.
Yeah, they should have been able.
A great call sign.
Oh, but
Donkey Lips, a great
Donkey Lips,
call
the
sign.
best. No, Sponge, the best call sign.
A great call sign. Yeah.
Yeah, I think
the plumber, a great call sign.
That sounds like, I don't know, more. Is that a good call sign? I feel like if you're
No, that's
if you're
more like a horror movie monster. Zeke the Plumber's a Cylon.
I feel like if you're going by 3-word call signs, I think we'll talk about it. Like that seems to be the limit. 2 words at most, I think,
Yeah,
is the proper call sign because you have to be able to like bark it out as you're
sure,
taking on fire. I
sure.
do think that. So I guess it's because a lot of the refugees are kind of being holed up in one of the flight decks. But I agree. I would try to give it at least some sort of either sarcastically or sincerely, like something to kind of gussy up the place
Don't
as
like
well.
everybody already feels so bad. You don't have to remind them that they're living in Camp Oil Slick. Uh,
Yeah.
anyway, so Leodama lost all of his weight, Mike. There's a quick scene of him and Hilo at the gym. Lee steps on the scale. Hilo says, "See, I told you could do it." And Lee says, "Remind me to never do that again." And Hilo says, "You got it, Slim."
So
And
is
it's
there
done.
yeah, is there any sort of story on the Galacticast about this that like did the
No.
writers reverse course? Because I'm wondering. Obviously, this is not season 3 of Lost, where they're like, as much as they were already not liking Nikki and Paulo, they're like, oh, they really don't like Nikki and Paulo. Let's do this. I don't think they were obviously responding to audience, feedback in the moment, but it's clear then that the creators or the writers, while they wanted to have their best intentions behind doing this, they very
It
much
wasn't
felt like,
working.
yeah, it
It
was something that
wasn't
should have been
working.
sloughed off, much like the wait itself, once everyone got back together.
I am not in possession of behind the scenes intel of how Lee got out of the fat suit, Mike. But I'm not questioning it. I'm happy. Don't make Jamie Bamber do that.
Yeah, I was gonna say, was that his green M&M of like, if once you do this, you better show me absolutely shredded in the first episode where I'm out of this thing.
Yeah, talk about Camp Oil Slick. He's like wet. It's like wet abs, wet
I
pecs.
actually wonder if this was the first scene they did immediately after taking him out of the fat suit, where he is just covered in sweat. It is so hot in there, and he's like, God, just do it now. I don't need to work out.
Yeah, yeah. That's all he needed. That's all he needed. So that's it. That's the Lee gets out of the fat suit storyline. No montage. I think I would have appreciated a montage.
Yeah,
At
I
the
mean, it
very
would have been,
least.
yeah, of like him doing sit-ups. Also, maybe Hilo sort of being his like motivational coach the entire time.
Yeah, it could have been good. Okay, Rosalind and Adama are meeting with Gata, and this is where we see that Baltar's work on finding Earth, Gata can corroborate that that's what's happening. What I'm finding is sort of what Baltar has found. It's the star maps that they had found on Kobol with the scrolls of Pythia. The scrolls talked about a lion's head with a blinking eye of red and blue.
Oh, the scroll's also looking for a home.
Gata discovered a note where Baltar had written blinking equals pulsar, the rotating core of a dead star. Gata found a place with 2 pulsars in proximity, one which would appear to blink blue and one which would appear to blink red. The pulsars are in a nebula that could be observed to look like a lion's head. Rosalind says, "That's the best lead we've got so far. Let's go lion hunting."
Let's finally look for Earth. I talked about this before. Like, there's really nothing else to do at this point. They've kind of reset it back to the quote unquote norm, right? Of like, well, we tried settling down on a planet and the Cylons are back and they're still chasing us. So, like, let's do what we were supposed to do back at the end of the miniseries and go find Earth. So, yeah, is it a little convenient that all of a sudden Gaius Baltar did some off screen research to find this thing? Sure. And this happens to be like the one sector of space they haven't seen yet or explored. Sure.
Yeah.
But, it moves the plot forward. And after really shirking this basically since the Tomb of Athena, which took place basically a season ago, right? Home part 1 and 2 was like episodes 5 and 6 of season 2. It feels nice to really dote upon this, especially now that we have Earth as a true MacGuffin for both sides.
Yeah, totally. Okay, well, let's go give an old friend a new name, shall we, Mike?
Let's do it. This is exciting.
I'm so happy. We're in the break room, right? Like we're in the everyone's just like getting drunk and playing cards, and Sharon is here, and Racetrack is here. Racetrack and Sharon are feeling like kind of tight because they're both Raptor people, and they're like, "Hey, do you ever like?" I'll be your wingman anytime. You could be my wingman anytime kind of energy.
Does it feel weird? Like, how does Baby Boomer feel that, to your point, and as Racetrack would point out, like, she basically is just picking up where Boomer left off of, like, she's even doing the same exact job. Shouldn't she want to pilot a Viper?
I mean, like, if we remember, for the woman we now know as Athena, her life was Sharon's life. Like, she like has a lot of those same memories, and then it splinters off from the point that she's like introduced in with Hilo and everything like that. So for her, some of this is like consistent with her own life's experience. So, she is getting individuality here, right? Like, if you want me, I'm yours, Boomer. And then Sharon says, but that was someone else. And Hilo says, all right, folks, we're going to need a call sign for Sharon. And then we get like our first like real look at like how this does come together. And so like now you can understand how some of these people get like the shitbag call sign.
Yeah.
Shitbag, not a bad call sign. The list we've got, thanks to the team behind the curtain, Ben and Brendan: Chrome Dome, Titania, Light Bulb, Wind Up Toy, Raptor Adapter, Microchip, Digital Dame, Mayflower, Carburetor, Tin Can, Toaster Babe, Transistor, Robopilot. I think they ended up missing out on a big opportunity with Robopilot. I feel like like just going around being Robopilot, like stop for the name of the law.
Exactly.
Pretty good.
No, I don't know. I honestly think, like, we'll talk about Athena and the meaningfulness behind it. Titania would be incredibly badass, and then she could grow her hair out and start attacking people with it.
Yeah.
She truly is inhuman, Josh.
It's true. And I believe Titania, queen of the fairies, I believe as well. But we've really been sticking to Greek myth in a big way here across Battlestar Galactica. And of course, Athena was a very big deal on the show already. We'd heard about Athena's arrow. We did the Temple of Athena, right? Like all of this stuff. So it's Hot Dog of all people who throws that out as an option. And it's like Goddess of War or whatever it was. Like, what does he say? Do you have this down?
So she said, like, Goddess of Wisdom, who Nike, which is the Goddess of Victory, often follows behind in battle.
Yeah. And Sharon likes that. Like, it feels like home, that name. And so Athena it is. Finally, it's not just a tale of two Sharons. It's not just a tale of a boomer and a baby boomer. We don't have to go with Sharon and Shaprika. We finally have an official name for this character that delineates her from the other boomers that we've seen. This is Athena. Say her name. That's her name. And that's how I will be referring to her from henceforth.
I love it. Well, first off, let me correct myself before all the Marvel people do the will actually and show up in my mentions. I was mixing Titania up with Medusa. I forgot Titania was the She-Hulk villain, not the Inhumans character. Yeah, I mean, obviously, this is a big deal. This is also perhaps in retrospect quite ominous, right? Of like, we're going to give you this name right before we possibly infect you with a deadly disease.
Yeah.
But it's a big moment. This is her truly separating herself from, to your point earlier, the life that she had led or had she been told as Sharon Agathon. This marks definitely a new relationship for her with the fleet, where not only that, like, she is welcomed in here. Everyone, we'll see how sarcastic some of those call signs were, but like, sure, she's not being stared at anymore, regarded as like an other. She was the one that helped lead the rescue operation. She's now an officer of the fleet. So this really is a period at the end of the sentence of like, you are one of us now. And so again, it's interesting that while she is not picking up from where Boomer left off, she still kind of is at the same time, because like, she is welcomed into this group as much as Sharon was going into everything that was happening in season 1. Should also be noted, like, she is given the name of a god, which I think does give her a bit of an otherworldly status, which also makes sense given the fact that she has a particular set of skills. It's due to her intel. But I also love the connection back to, again, let's reference that two-parter of Home. She was integral into the entire exploration of the tomb of Athena. That was also another moment where William Adama nearly got shot, but right, we'll talk about later on.
And she like tried to express like, I'm on your team. I'm on your team. I'm shooting these doofuses instead.
So I think it's a really great reference back to like an inflection point for the character as well. And yeah, it's very interesting that we have Apollo and Athena as well. I wonder if Tom Zarek will have anything to say about like you're named Athena after the goddess of wisdom. That being said, the way that we leave things at the end of this episode, I don't know how much Nike is following behind her in victory, considering what she might be bringing back.
Okay, we'll find out. Ty's going to show up on the other side of this and get drunk with Starbuck and play some cards. And so this is where we start getting into, like you said, like the Thanksgiving arguments.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough because like objectively, big on New Caprica was the much tougher thing. We even talked about this in the first couple of episodes of like, we're not spending a lot of time with the fleet because there's really nothing doing. Like, you're more so just kind of sitting there as the war widows until Adama puts the plan together, hoping that they come back. Otherwise, it's a bit of sitting on your hands. So I do feel for them in that like Cat and Racetrack are both kind of trying to make the both sides were difficult argument when it's like, no, once again, I will say I lost something. I'm hoping you could find it.
Yeah,
for
Saul
me.
says, while you were strapping wings on your Cylon girlfriend, my people were strapping bombs to their chests.
And I also imagine that, yeah.
Forgive me if I don't get misty-eyed about your sacrifices, especially because I only have the one. I'm missing an eye.
I also would imagine that part of his derision is driven by the fact that like Sharon has now been fully accepted into the midst, right? Like he clearly has some thoughts about anyone who was conspiring with Cylons, let alone like, yeah, what have you done for me lately? But at the same time, you're still these Cylons that we've been fighting against, even more so because of everything that I lost. So not to say that like Cat and Racetrack and others were in the right for arguing for their point, but obviously, it seems like Starbuck and Ty are going to take this several steps further by not only speaking up against the fact that it was much harder for them, but like also kind of using it as a point to be like, you have nothing to say right now. We are better than you because of what we went through on New Caprica.
Our pain is worse than your pain, right?
Yeah, exactly. And so therefore, like, I don't know. It's almost like them trying to work out a hierarchy, which unfortunately does happen in humanity sometimes. Of like, well, the trauma I experience is worse than yours, so I have the right to feel my way, and you don't have the right to feel yours.
Correct. It's interesting to me too because like we, as early as the very, beginning of the miniseries, basically, we have seen, Starbuck and Saul came to odds here in this very room.
Yeah, she got sent to the brig because of that.
Over a drunken card game. And here they are like seeing eyes to eye on this matter, right? And so like, even when they're opposed to each other, some measure of violence ensues. When they are collaborating and on the same page and on message with each other, some form of violence ensues. There's like a toxic combustibility to these two people when they get together. And like there's more of that here, right? Like Ty and Starbuck are talking about why is a Cylon lover holding down my post, and why are you off of flight duty?
Right. It's like, no, they're replacing us after all we did. Like, it is this brand of nihilism, but also
we believe in nothing, Adama.
Yeah, but also like a feeling of not being given their due at the same time. Of like, we underwent all of this, and what was it all for if we came back and like everything was basically taken from us? But I think Kat, in a later conversation, makes a very salient point, which is basically like, speaking of projection, why are you taking it out on us when the ones you have the problems with are the Cylons? Perhaps as a bit of a subtitle for what happened last episode of like, why are you killing all these human beings when really you're just trying to lash out on anyone who's the most in proximity of things? Also should be noted, nary a sign of Anders in this episode, which to me means I don't know if this is a series wrap on the character. I think they might like bring him back for an operation or something, but I think by and large his time with the show might be receding.
Hilo's time with the show is not receding. It is only rising because he has Adama's ear. He's going to be the guy that comes and gives Adama the briefings.
I mean, he is the XO, so it makes sense.
He's looking sharp in that suit. What do you think of Hilo in uniform?
I'm liking the new hairstyle as well, where it's not just like the shaved or closely shorn head. Like, he's cleaning up. He's doing well for himself. Now, look, that might take a big turn once Sharon comes back a little worse for wear. But it seems like he really got his stuff together in the intermediate. I would imagine, especially like not only playing the role of Ty in his immediate position to Adama, but also like filling that in from an emotional perspective as well.
Yeah. I mean, he and Adama have had like the better part of a year to like really get close also.
Yeah.
So there's like some shorthand that exists between them that we missed out on and we just get to kind of join in on. So Adama is being informed that Athena and Racetrack, they're being briefed by Gata. Adama has already heard the nickname. Word travels fast. He's excited. But then he's like, so what's going on with the morale on the flight deck? And I've heard that Ty is like getting blasted. And he's like, yeah, they've been holding court. They've been second guessing the rescue, bad mouthing everybody who stayed aboard the Big G. Adama says, are people listening? Hilo says that their words hold a lot of weight. And yeah, it's affecting morale.
And so suddenly, says, if you weren't with the ground war, you can't be trusted. Which I don't know if that's the leap to make, but I guess I'll take Hilo's word for it that it's like, oh, okay, basically the only people that you should be able to listen to are those that live through New Caprica.
Yeah, that's kind of how it seems like they're addressing things. So it's like the sleepover's getting rowdy and Dad has to come down to the basement. So Adama comes
and as all sleepovers end, the dad pulls out a gun and says, just shoot me.
Adama comes to the rec room. He kicks everybody out but Starbuck and Ty. He puts the gun on the table. One of you, I don't care who, load that gun and shoot me, or go back to work. Like you've got a choice. Like neither of you are going to pick this up and shoot me because you've got no guts and you're both cowards. He tells Starbuck, you were a daughter to me once, not right now.
After knocking her to the ground, when she like gives him a snarky response, he just like throttles her.
Yeah. He pushes her over in her chair. You're not my daughter. You're a cancer and you won't be on my ship.
And she says, you got more of a Pisces.
Figure out how to be a human being again or find another place to live. You're dismissed. Starbuck, at the very least, by the end of this episode, she is going to go to Camp Oil Slick. She's going to visit Julia and Casey, and she is going to get a hug from Casey. And it feels like it's a step towards some measure of healing for Starbuck.
Well, Josh, you skipped over the biggest thing, which is Lee's not the only character to have a bit of a change in look in this episode. We are back to the Star Bob,
Yeah, she cuts
haircut.
her hair. Yeah.
She cuts her hair, which I think is a very
She has her Felicity moment here. Yeah.
She really does. And I think it's a clear representation of like her trying to go back to before, right?
Yeah.
To that old life. Because she only grew the hair out when we do the time jump on New Caprica. And maybe it was sort of a representation of her like settling into this more civilian lifestyle where she could quite literally let her hair down, be a little less guarded, start a life with Sam. But this is her really like getting back into things. And as much as in a deleted scene last week, she was really trying to tell Anders like, nope, I'm signing up for flight crew. I need to get back to doing this. This is all I can do. This is all I was born to do. It's really interesting because obviously these two characters, we'll talk about it with Ty, have two incredibly different responses. And they make sense for both characters because for Starbuck, that ultimatum goes over really well from Adama's perspective because she has kind of always been a kid without a home. We talk about time and time again that she ended up joining the military because she had problems with her family and was looking for a place to go. That's why she ends up falling in with the Adamas and starts dating Zach. They were sort of a figurative family to her. So I do think threatening her with this prospect of like, if you don't stop acting this way, you're going to lose the only home you ever had is enough to kind of shake her out of her funk and also allows her to like, in a way, kind of embrace another form of family as well. And like letting this very complicated situation with Casey into her life where she is willing to open herself up to those vulnerabilities and be like, clearly, I mean, at least my projection is that clearly she had an attachment to Casey. Yes, she's linked to the trauma of Leoben, but she doesn't want to necessarily get hurt again by just trying to do away with everything that happened on New Caprica. And her allowing this hug from Casey, it represents things twofold for me. A, that she is allowing the past to, not get denied, to open that door for the memories to come flooding in, but also that she's willing to move on from it as well. That ironically enough, in kind of rebuffing her past, she has allowed it to take up so much space in her mind. And as a result, it's only through kind of acknowledging the pain that she's only able to move on from it. So I think things are looking up for Starbuck. I think she will probably be back on the flight crew lickety split. And it does make sense given the relationship, despite like how aggressive Adama was, both physically and verbally with her. I think he knew it was kind of the message he needed to send to her in that moment.
Ty, meanwhile, it's a different story for a couple of reasons. One, he and Bill are contemporaries and BFF, right? Like they go back 30 years. Their dynamic,
he can't utilize that power dynamic over Salt as he does with Starbuck.
That their dynamic is just so radically different. And like Ty just did all the things that he had to do. Again, not to like say one person's pain is more painful than the other, but he was like he was not only like dealing with like his own physical pain, his own emotional pain, but he was also the one at the top making these like really hardcore choices of like how to fight back. And that has taken more from him than just an eye. It's obviously it took ultimately Ellen from him too. And Adama says, look, I know you've been through a lot. And I love this from Saul. Don't patronize me, Bill. Just say what you came to say. And Adama says, you're full of hatred. If you need time, you can take all the time you want. I know something happened to you. I imagine it has something to do with Ellen. I'm sorry, but I have a ship to run. You can't be sowing discontent, so you can pick up that gun and shoot me, or be confined into your quarters until you're ready to act like the man I've known for the last 30 years. Ty picks up the gun, takes out the round and the cartridge, and says, the man you knew doesn't exist anymore, and you won't be seeing me again. And he goes back to his quarters, and much like Wolverine with the picture of Mo, he's going to weepingly look at a picture of Ellen, and that's the end of Saul Ty in this episode.
Yeah, so this also makes sense from this character's perspective. And I think that, if I'm talking about this tactfully, I think that Adama made the wrong choice in the argument to Ty, which is basically like, suck it up, Buttercup, and move on, I need you. Because, yeah, people undergo traumas and life-changing moments where they cannot go back to before. And for Ty, what Adama is underlining is the wrong point, which is like, you need to become the person that I remembered you being, which is a bad argument to make right now, in my opinion. Now, granted, Adama doesn't know the full extent, obviously, of what Ty did down there, but I actually think this was an incorrect way to approach things, which was surprising given how much Adama knows Ty, and maybe is also a symbol of the fact that Ty truly has changed as a person, that maybe he would be more willing to do it if Adama doesn't make the argument of like, yeah, just get over the fact that you killed your own wife and lost an eye and had to lead this revolution and wear this uniform again and do all the things that you used to back in the day. Saul makes a very salient point that there is no going back to that version of Saul Ty. That being said, you know, I have been lucky enough, knock on wood, that I have not undergone life-changing trauma in a way that Saul has. But I certainly know in dealing with people who have, they might fundamentally change as a person, but it doesn't make them a changed person. I don't know if that makes sense, but it's like, it's not like they're going to become this, you know, virulently, rapidly, incredibly different person, like flipping a switch from off to on. It's more like turning a dial. And I do think that, to a point I earlier made, I think we're still seeing shades of the Saul Ty that Bill is talking about in previous scenes. I think it kind of has to become, for lack of a better term, Josh, a bit of a hybrid of Saul being able to sort of become the person that he was and move on, while also understandably carrying this emotional weight. It's much like I talked about with Starbuck. It's not a matter of necessarily ditching the backpack and being like, I don't need this anymore, la-di-da-di-da, I'm the XO again. It's more so knowing that you have to carry this weight, but shifting it between your shoulders. You know, I think Saul is really one-strapping it right now. This metaphor is absolutely getting away.
No, I love it.
I love it. And that, like, really imbalancing the way that he is carrying himself right now, that is affecting his physical, mental, emotional mood. He needs to learn to kind of shift things back where he truly can become a version of himself that he previously was, because the other side of it is what we see at the end of this episode, which is just this miserable man who drowns his sorrows in inebriation and grabs random blonde women thinking they're his late wife. There's got to be a happy medium here.
He's not seeing clearly.
Aha! There we go.
And he needs to figure out how to do that with his new life, his whole new existence. And it's a hard road for him right now.
And it's
Um,
really interesting considering that, people grieve in different ways, but I certainly have seen when people do experience catastrophic losses close to them, like their immediate gut instinct is to go back to before, is to just go back to work like nothing happened and try to throw yourself into your everyday existence. And that also proves to be a rather fruitless endeavor. You have to shoot for something in the middle. And I do think we're going to get that from time, maybe as recent as next episode, and that they will sort of find this hybridized version of him, which is still in his emotions, but also able to move forward as a member of this crew.
The episode ends with Athena and Racetrack jumping out to the Lion's Head Nebula. They see the blinking eye. They think they found the road to Earth, but then they see all these dead raiders in the base ship. And Athena says, "When God's anger awakens, even the mighty shall fall." And yeah, rightfully concerned. Athena, this is not a great place for you to be right now.
Yeah,
We get hit with a to be continued, a classic, Mike.
So let me just walk this through, Josh.
Yeah.
The entirety of season 3 of BSG so far has been a two-part premiere that was
Uh-huh.
two separate episodes, but was like made to be a two-part
Yes.
premiere. There was an actual two-part episode.
Correct.
There was a standalone episode, and now we're getting another two-part episode.
Yes. Yes.
I'm really intrigued to see if this is how we're gonna keep moving forward with the series. That
You know,
essentially it's gonna be
there
like,
are absolutely like one-offs and other stuff still along the way. But this is a thing that Lost never did for us. We never got a to be continued title card, and
I
like
mean,
now
to be fair,
now
the
we're over halfway through BSG, and we've had it a bunch of times. This is a thing BSG does. I like it. I think I've decided like, okay, all right, you give me your arbitrary to be continued. I'm here for it. Why not?
I mean, I like it better than obviously the first one that we had back in season 1, both with Take You by Surprise and also like the weird media res thing they did of like, we start the episode with Starbuck free falling towards the planet. You want to know how I got here? This at least built some intrigue, and I will maybe counter your claim that like Lost never did this with the fact that like there are a lot of arguably Lost episodes that did it by just presenting a big cliffhanger and not including to be continued. That said, it doesn't really feel like, I don't know, that climactic of a moment for me to be continued. It like I honestly think what's just going to happen in minute 1 next episode is that the Raptor's going to jump away,
I
and that's
I
it.
I don't think that there's like a lot of utility to the to be continueds here. I
Yeah.
just think that they're kind of hilarious. Like when I say that Lost never did anything like this, what I literally mean is they never put to be continued on screen.
Yes.
They just ended episodes provocatively, and you would want to go into the next one. BSG often ends episodes provocatively, but I also think BSG also has a tendency to like contain an episode and like
Mhm.
end it on its own terms. So that maybe when they do end it in such a way where it's a little more plot hooky, that they want to just be like, this story continues next week because this is some serialized storytelling. You can't just jump in and out right now. Right now, you're gonna have to plan on continuing the story from this episode next time out. So like, I don't know. I think it's a quirk. I could take or leave it for sure. I would really appreciate the understanding, the argument from people who would want to leave it. I think I've just like come to like I find it endearing. I think to be continued on this show is just somehow just like a little bit endearing.
It's a fun
Um,
quirk of the show.
yeah. Mike, let's do top fives, bottom fives, not yet. Final fives. I've got 3 MVPs. You've got 2. Looks like all of our MVP points are aboard the Big G.
Yeah, I mean, this makes sense because it does feel like kind of a mixed bag with the silence. I was debating giving Head 6 a point, but A, I was trying to remember if we had given her points as a character previously, and like
We have.
B, yeah, but B, things are left so up in the air with the Cylons that it didn't feel like there were any particular winners and losers. Like, yes, Baltar is able to work his way in with the Cylons, but Caprica 6 now knows he was lying.
Right.
Yes, the Cylons are able to get this information, but a bunch of them just got infected and died. And even Head
Right.
6, again, like she helps get Gaius what he wants, but it still is not very smooth. So I put a bit of a TBD on that, especially when I found out it was a to be continued episode. So
Sure.
all Big G all the way here in the MVPs this week.
So I gave my first point to Athena for finally giving me her actual name, and I can say it on the podcast.
There we go. For that release.
Yes. I
Josh,
feel greatly relieved.
I will give a point to the man who offered that release. Hot dog! Get your hot dogs
I'm
here!
thrilled. I really wish that I could give. You know what? Screw it. I am. I'm gonna take. So I was gonna give a point to Bill Adama this week, but I know that you are also giving a point to Bill Adama, so I'm gonna
Yes.
let you stand in for my Adama point.
Uh-huh.
While in the same way that we wanted to get Gene Barrelay on the list with a -1, I don't have anywhere in the LVPs that I want to lose. So come on down and get an MVP point, Narcho. We're gonna get Narcho on this one.
Nacho!
Yeah.
Nacho!
Polo. Yeah. Narcho's coming down. Narcho's getting an
What did
MVP
he
point for
do? What
having
did Nacho do?
he exists. He has a ridiculous call sign
I
name. I
hope
want
so.
to
I
put
hope
him on
Nacho was
here.
the one that Starbuck hit and maybe
Yeah.
killed.
Yeah. So Narcho's here. You're giving a point to Adama though.
Oh yeah, I mean, listen, this is maybe, despite the fact that he did save all of humanity, like one of the best Bill Adama moments I've seen in quite some time, where he like walks down here, dismisses everybody, shakes the shit out of these two characters, and look, it's 1 for 2 ultimately. But as someone who, again, was not enjoying the path that these two characters were taking, it felt so cathartic to have Bill step down there and basically tell Starbuck what she needed to hear in that moment. And again, maybe a bit of a miss in terms of Saul, but God, just for the pure empathy I was feeling for this character, I gotta give it to Bill saber rattling his saber in this moment.
Yeah. Great stuff. Great stuff from Bill. My final MVP point is going to go to Hilo for apparently like being the Apollo Creed that Apollo needs.
That's my Apollo Creed.
That's my Apollo Creed. So points to Hilo. You and I are on the exact same page for our bottom 5. We're both going to hit Saul. We're both going to hit Kara. I think a great episode for both actors and for the characters, but obviously they're just acting really shitty, and I don't think there's an excuse.
Yeah, that's the thing, is we can appreciate, it's almost like the opposite of the Ethan Raw memorial point, Josh, where it's like, we appreciate that this character is acting, these good characters are acting shitty, so we're going to give them an LVP
You're
point
being
for it.
bad at being good.
Exactly. That's
You
the
know?
thing. And I will give my final LVP point to the Cylons, as we'll get into our next segment as well. I do feel like this was an objective L for them,
Yeah.
because a bunch of them got infected, and there's even some infighting amongst themselves, as we experience with a bit of this roundtable that happens. Even without Gaius Baltar functioning as the shadow puppet leader, turns out that the Cylons have a lot of disparate opinions as to how they should proceed. So things are not looking great for them at the moment, and even more so considering that there may be a patient zero
Yeah.
either coming aboard or in direct contact with them at the end of this episode.
Mike, we got to pit the Cylon versus the fleet as we do each week. I think we've got our first Colonel tie of the season so far.
Really? Oh, I thought I guess the Cylons definitely lost. I guess the question is, did the fleet win this
I don't
week?
think that the fleet won. I mean, I
That's a
think
good
like
point.
Athena getting like her name, that's great, but at the same time, like Saul and Kara are toxifying the workplace in a really significant way. And Saul, like Starbuck, we don't know if she's reformed yet. Yeah, she cut off her hair. Yeah, she went and gave the kid a hug, but we don't, like, she's been grounded still. So like one of our top pilots isn't in a Viper. And Ty just told Bill, like, you'll never see me again. So like Bill went and did his best
Because
there.
Cylon's gonna sit on my face and I'm gonna get recast.
And my other eye is gonna pop out. So I think I'm inclined to say it was a tie this time.
Very good argument. I will buy that. Yeah, it's definitely a loss for the Cylons. It's not necessarily a win for the fleet at this moment. And also, like, one of the ace in the holes that they just had in the form of Athena may be compromised, as we experienced at the end of this episode. You know, they do say the first step of the happening is people talking nonsense. So if Shaprika starts walking backwards next episode, we know it's happening.
Yeah. You're a fake tree. I'm talking to a fake tree.
What? No.
No. Okay, we got to rate the episode. I think pretty cleanly the weakest of the episodes we've received so far.
Yes.
But I still think a really good episode of the show. I was a little higher on it, and then as we started talking it through, started to get a little lower on it. Sometimes that happens. So I landed where you landed, Mike, and I think we're both giving this one a 3.7.
Yeah, and I gave the premiere a 3.8, so it's like a smidge below it. Actually, some similarities, I would say, with the premiere, which is like okay, this very much feels like the first part of a two-part episode, which I think does bring it down a bit for me. The Cylon stuff I was really excited by, but I'm still kind of chewing over as to like, I don't know if I necessarily objectively positively like all of it. It's just a bunch of weird new stuff that is exciting to chew over. And the other side is understandably characters behaving badly, which doesn't make for like the best stuff to watch, in my opinion, even if it is an ecological step for the character. As I talked about with the premiere, for all I know, my esteem for this episode could rise upon
Sure.
finding out apparently the conclusion of these events in the next episode, but that's where I see it so far. It is my least favorite episode of the season, but only by a smidge.
I think that's totally fair. Before we frack off, Mike, anything from the deleted scenes this week?
Yeah, so we have a little bit of an extension of this initial walk and talk where Caprica 6 is talking to Gaius all about projections. They will get brought to a room where it is Doral and Deanna, and they are with baby Hera. Yeah, remember baby Hera? She's the baby. Gotta love her. So Caprica 6 is like, I was just talking to Gaius about projections. Deanna's like, oh, what a coincidence. My happy place is a church. Aaron Durrell says nothing because he's basically a Michael Dawson wallflower at this point in the series. And so Deanna, it will then give a big announcement within her mind palace of her church. Boomer is now her own baby Boomer. She is now the mother of Hera. It's so interesting, right? Because on the other side, we have baby Boomer basically being told, like, yeah, you're going to be picking up the work of your predecessor. That is kind of the case with this version of Boomer as well, as Deanna will tell regular Boomer, well, your make and model does have this experience and connection with the child, so you are going to take care of her. Boomer is quite surprised. A little surprised this is relegated to a deleted scene because I feel like this is a rather large beat for the character that we'll have to focus on in a later episode. But then Deanna has a moment with Baltar where, as I mentioned before, she thanks him. It's his, fault. I would say fault, but maybe from a certain perspective it is, that she found the child in the first place. He responds, perhaps a little glibly, I only did what he compelled me to do. And she replies, you must be a very important of his plan. It's almost like you're one of us.
Yeah. Okay. Count Jumpula, we reached a little bit of a moment here. The Ben behind the curtain had reached out to me and asked, what do we do about this? Because potentially there's only one jump in this episode since we've been counting just the fleet's jumps. Athena's Raptor at the end of the episode. That would bring our current jump count to 33. We might be able to bring our jump count up to 35 if we include the 2 Cylon base ship jumps. And the reason potentially to include those is because Baltar is on the Cylon's ship right now. I kind of feel like if it's unless like, I think you need like a quorum. I think like you need like, there needs to be more than just Baltar. We're talking about like the most treacherous human alive, right? Like the guy who just like presided over the imprisonment of his entire species for 4 months or so. This is the guy who gets to like represent the fleet in the fleet jump count. It doesn't sit right with me, Mike. If there were more people in the mix, or even if it was another one, I think I might feel better about it.
I would agree. Yeah, this is really morally gray area because it's like, as much as Deanna just said in the deleted scenes, it's like, you're one of us. Like, is Baltar really part of the Cylons at this point? Is he part of the fleet? I think it's none of the above. I feel like this is more in a miscellaneous category of like, here's a character that's not really anchored down to the fleet. And so when he jumps, I would say that like when if Baby Boomer commandeered a Raptor back in like the early days of season 2 and jumped away, that didn't count as a fleet jump because like she's not really with the Cylons and she's not really with the fleet either, despite kind of cooperating.
But
with
when she jumped to New Caprica, she's fleet. She was pinned, So I don't know. I mean, like, guys, Baltar, he ain't president anymore. That's for sure. And like he's either like Cylon prisoner of war, or potentially just like exiled from both communities.
That's I'm taking it more as the latter. That like
Yeah.
he is really kind of on the third side of this battle now, where he's kind of hearing everybody out, though he is under
He's on his
duress.
own journey now.
Yeah, exactly. And in
Yeah.
one situation, he's really the ultimate swing vote in this final 5 situation.
Yeah, that's right. Okay, so we're just gonna count the one then.
We'll just count the one.
We get 8 fracks, 2 from Kat, 2 from Lee, 2 from Racetrack, 1 from Starbuck, 1 from Adama, surprisingly none from Ty.
I mean, that really shows that he is quite literally a different person.
Doesn't
He's
give
not
a
squaring
frack.
up a storm anymore.
Mike, speaking of fracks, you have originally predicted that Starbuck and Apollo would frack within 41 episodes. The countdown is on 39 episodes down.
She's getting her groove back. We're on a little bit of an upswing.
Are we going to get it done in the second part of the 2-parter?
I mean, we'll make it go upswing into upswing, if you catch my drift.
Swing.
I mean, what is interesting is that I have not seen head nor hide of D whatsoever since the tribes have merged, basically. Like,
Yeah.
I know that Pegasus obviously got destroyed, so she's like on the ship, but like I haven't seen her in the CIC. She's had no scenes with Lee at all. So listen, we saw the breakup of one couple last time. Could part 2 or the episode after mean Trouble in Paradise?
Starbuck about to get a new call sign, Homewrecker.
You know what? It just might be. Ariana Grande be damned.
All right. Well, we'll find out next week what's going to happen in a very special episode of Battlestar Galactica that Rob and Akiva are going to join for season 3, episode 7. They will not be here. I would never inflict this upon them. A Measure of Salvation is the name of the second part of. I mean, it's not even the second part of Torn. It's just like the other side of Torn. Give me some predictions, A Measure of Salvation. What do you expect to happen?
So I do think that within the first act, nary the first few minutes of the episode, we're gonna have this thing of like, oh no, Athena's talking weird, and Racetrack will be like, step to your senses and warp us out. She'll be like, okay, and then they jump out, and then the rest of the episode will now be dealing with like her mentally compromised state separate from all of that. The only other feasible outcome I could see would be that like the Cylons capture them, and now we get this beat that I've been trying to prognosticate for a while, which is like the baby boomer conversation that she had with Deanna on New Caprica. I don't expect that to happen because the Cylons are dealing with their own thing. I think Gaius Baltar is going to be like immediately under a lot of shit. He'll be shoved back into that little cell and then some once it comes out that like, oh, there's a ship with a bunch of dead bodies on it, Gaius Baltar. What the hell was that all about? And what is this thing? I think we'll find out some information about what exactly this beacon is. And obviously, I think we'll see these symptoms manifest themselves in Athena. You know, Brunette 6 had said, kill me now because I don't want to experience what they experience. I think we'll find out immediately what that experience. And as much as one character lost out on their storyline of a terminal illness in the form of Laura Roslin, Munn might pick it up in her place. I don't think we're necessarily going to get something incredibly long term, but I do think that's going to be the focus. I said last week that it was going to be a big baby boomer Athena Shaprika episode, and I think it's going to continue going forward.
All right, let's see what happens to Athena and the rest of them when we continue Battlestar Galactica season 3 episode 7, A Measure of Salvation. Make sure you are subscribed. Battlestar Galactica down the hatch wherever you get your podcasts. Search for it, subscribe, pass it around to the table if you are celebrating the holidays this week in the United States. Would love to get some new subscribers. We'd be so thankful for that. But we're already so thankful for all of you hatchlings who listen to this podcast. We're super thankful for the team behind the curtain, Ben and Brendan, who make this podcast possible. They ship through the pneumatic tubes. They come into your ears. It's an incredible time here on the Big G. Follow Mike and I. We are on Blue Sky at a Mike Bloom type, at Round Howard. That's me. Mike, you got anything you want to tell the peeps about? Anything you're working on?
I mean, the usual stuff. There will still be new episodes of both Survivor and Silo. My S shows are still going strong during Thanksgiving week, so I've got podcasts about that. And yeah, last but not least, I can not stop saying how thankful I am. I mean, obviously, especially, you know, given all of our moves the past month, it's sometimes these moments where I'm especially thankful that we get the opportunity to dive into the recesses of space and yes, talk about some very dark content, but with one of my favorite people in the world and about a show that I immensely enjoy getting to explore each and every Monday morning before getting to record. So, we got a long weekend before we jump back to it. I think we'll be back to your regularly scheduled program, still not affected by the holiday. Still have an episode next week, but I'm excited to sort of languish in my post pumpkin pie hangover and take in some more BSG, feast on another episode of this over the weekend.
That sounds delightful. I echo all of your sentiments, especially the part about getting to do this with one of my favorite people, not just on the planet, in the galaxy.
Whoa, wow.
Because I don't know anyone else off Earth. You're the only alien I know.
Yeah, listen, I represent all of us, and we, as all the aliens like to say, Josh, you are one of our closest allies. We will welcome you on board. You are our Athena.
I thought you were about to say, as all of us aliens say, you all, everybody. I was going to be like, Charlie? Is an alien too?
That's why they all danced in diapers, because they're like, oh, this is what humans do, assumingly.
That's right. It was just an imitation. Of course, let me just quickly plug. How about we close this out with a very quick Frump date, Mike?
Yeah!
It's been a while since we've done a Frump date from the show starring Harold Perrineau of Lost fame, which I have described on numerous Down the Hatch podcasts as horror Lost. Instead of being trapped on an island, we're trapped in a nightmare town. It asks a lot of questions, very mystery boxy, very character forward show. Just completed its 3rd season on MGM Plus with a flat out banger of a finale,
wow.
A game changer of a finale, an incredible episode of TV. We're going to be getting into it on the weekend program coming up next weekend. Antonio Mazzaro has become a frumvert. I was going to say a from convert. He is fully engrossed in the town. The great Rich Filiberto will be joining us for that as well. So if you don't know about the weekend program, it's a TV variety show. Each and every weekend, Antonio and I get together to talk about different topics. This coming week's topic is going to be From. So if you have been somebody who has been asking for a From podcast, never fear. It's going to take us a week to parse out what the hell just happened anyway. I know that I'm hard at work on a rewatch right now, so we're trying to give you a really comprehensive From podcast on the other side of Thanksgiving. So hope you enjoy that. If you're a From fan, if you're not currently a From fan, like Mike, I really, 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 really think you would love this show.
You got a long weekend ahead of you celebrating Thanksgiving. No time like the present.
Renewed for a 4th season.
Yeah.
Which probably won't be out until 2026. So plenty of time to binge 30 episodes of From.
It's all on MGM Plus or on Prime as well.
Yeah, you can get it on Prime if you've got like some, and there's other ways, we all have ways. So some of us have Google Maps. Anyway, check it out. From podcast coming to the weekend program this coming weekend. Battlestar Galactica returning to Down the Hatch next week for a measure of salvation. Until then, everybody, we hope those who are celebrating have a happy holiday, or as happy a holiday as possible. Mike and I are thankful for you for listening to this episode and all the episodes that you've listened to. Your support means the world to us. So we will keep churning out these podcasts as long as you keep listening to them. Till next time, folks, take care.